drawing from very young?
Yeah, my dad could draw. And so he used it only as a, like a continuation of a conversation. Hey, I'm thinking about building a deck on the back of the house. And he'd flip over a napkin and go, and it's gonna look something like this.
Oh yeah?
So to me, that's what drawing was. It was part of just an act of communication. So he could draw, I could draw. I have two sisters, they weren't interested in it. So it was something him and I just did. So drawing was incorporated into the house, but I'm of an age where this was way too early. My dad was in World War II.
Oh, really?
He got out and, you worked for a company and you worked for them for the rest of, that was it. You got yourself, and so the idea of art as a career, that was kind of foreign. So I never looked at it that way. It wasn't until I was late in my teens before I went, art, business, this could be.
Well, what made that trigger? What flipped that switch?
So when I was in high school, the way they had the structure of the high school I went to is you had to accumulate 100 points by the time you got to your senior year. Okay. And you would get 20 for this, 20 for that. And then, they had it all figured out that, you get your accredited courses and then here's the magic number. You have to have this magic number to get your diploma. So when I hit my senior year, not that I was a good student or anything, but I had accumulated that 100 points early on. So what a lot of kids did was go to school half a day and then go get a job.
Okay.
And so I presented that to my dad, and he's like, no, you're not, I don't want you hanging around the house,
right.
So I don't care what you do, find some other courses and fill your day. He goes, I don't care if you do flower arranging or basket weaving. So I went into my guidance counselor and he's like, well, we don't have, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I like art. And he's going, well, you already did the art courses we have here, but he goes, I just got this flyer in from the trade school that's in the next town over, and they're offering a commercial art class. And the way it would work is you'd come to school, you'd check into your homeroom, and then we'd put you on a bus and you would go over to this school a few miles away and spend a half a day there. And then we'd bring you back, so you would finish your, so it filled my day, and it was art. And it's like, all right, awesome. I'm in.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got there, it was, it was the epiphany, it was the, oh my God, art as a business. They didn't, we didn't do fine art stuff. It was all about production and printing.
Wow.
And
that must have been valuable education.
It was, and the teacher was not your quintessential art teacher. He was a ex-Marine from the Korean War. He had a flat top haircut, smoked cigarettes, and back then they used to let us smoke cigarettes in the classroom. So he'd be smoking, and and he would say stuff, like it would be coffee break time, and be like, okay, smoke them if you got them. And
wow.
but knew what he was talking about, a no-nonsense guy, obviously. And it was like, oh yeah, this is it.
Such a strange connection to being raised by soldiers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's a handful of male characters in my life, and most of them had some sort of. Well, there was a time where everybody was in the military. Back in my dad's day, he didn't even stay for graduation. He went right into the service. Everybody wanted to go.
Yeah, that's crazy. So at this time, how many mediums are you working in then?
So in art school, in high school art, they exposed you to a lot of stuff, and it was okay, this is oil paint, this is this, and a lot of more crafty type stuff. But when we got to the commercial art school, we were at the beginning mostly heavily working in black and white, and teaching us the difference between line art and halftone, and how that applies to the printing process, and how to get your art ready for camera. And then we would we had cameras, so we would shoot art and actually do printing. So it was start to finish. We learned a lot of those basic techniques, so you start to get your head around the idea of, this is a good painting, now we're going many years in the future, this is a good painting, but you gotta be careful of the contrast here, because it's gonna lose something in the printing process, so get more contrast here, so this doesn't get muddy.
Right. So when does the painting really start to?
So
flourish?
I had signed up to go to a college so I lived and grew up in New Jersey. And so back then, I think it's Rowan College is now called, well, it used to be called Glassboro State. And I had signed up to go to college there because, again, big thing with my dad was he didn't get a chance to go to college. We're going to college. So, but after I took this art class, I was like, I gotta go to art school. I don't want to go to college anymore. So I came home and I told him that I don't want to go to college. I want to go to art school. Didn't go over well. Let's just say he wasn't thrilled by the idea. And I went back to the vocational school the next day. The guy who was my teacher, his name was Frank. And I went in, and we used to be able to call him by his first name. Yeah. So I went in and I said, yeah, Frank, I talked to my dad last night. He's not happy. I want to go to art school, but I'm gonna end up at the college. And he said, oh, okay. He goes, give me your dad's phone.
Oh, yeah.
And I called him up. He said, hey, meet me, at the local pub. And him and my dad sat down and had a beer. And he told him that, listen, your son's got some talent. Art school is not what you think it is. This is a real thing. And I think you should give him a chance. Came home that night, and I didn't know this was happening. My father's going, I talked to your teacher tonight. And if Frank says it's cool, then let's do this. So
wow,
yeah, so,
wow, what a teacher to
absolutely
make that effort, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
obviously, Frank and I were friends for a lot of years.
I'm
after
sure
that,
you remained a mentor kind of thing.
Just a friend, because
Okay.
I eventually I got married and I moved somewhere, and I moved close to where he was.
Right.
And there was a pub where I know he hung out,
Oh, cool.
and I would go there. And we had beers together
Wow.
until he passed away. So.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
What a neat way to come up. By the way, if anybody has any questions, just shout them out or put a hand up. I know there's a mic there, but it's a pretty intimate room here.
Yeah.
But feel free to get involved here, because I'll just ramble on for a while, okay? So the education is there. You finally get to go to art school. Which art school do you go to?
So I go to this tiny art school in Hillsborough, New Jersey called Spectrum Institute. We're so tiny, we're the downstairs to a doctor's office. There's 20 of us in the graduating class.
Okay.
So 60, 70 kids in the whole school. So what was unique about this school was they only hired teachers who were working artists, and no one taught every day of the week. They would come in, you're there on Tuesday, Thursday, but on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you were actually in the field doing something.
Oh, cool.
So not only would we get assignments, but then they would bring in things that they're working on and talk about the issues that they're having with their clients, what production issues they'd run into. So
Okay.
very hands-on, very, very
Like
much so
actual
like,
experience,
yeah, and then,
yeah.
but then you could see why, we're doing this assignment because we're gearing towards this. So it gave a bigger picture to all the assignments that we
Okay.
had. Fantastic school, fantastic teachers, all different walks of life too. It wasn't like everybody was a book illustrator. Actually, I didn't have a book illustrator teacher until my final year. So you got great exposure to many different things, and again, that's all very, very valuable.
So during that time, are you just like laser focused on learning, or is it starting to spin in your head what you want to do as a career, like where you want to take the art? Because I assume you graduate.
Yeah. So, but yeah, at first you're just going, I'm overwhelmed. There's a lot to do here. I've never been in the environment where it's we went 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. This was not college. You have 2 classes in the morning. It's like a job.
Yeah.
And so you had lots of assignments, and you was like, ooh, this is different. This is harder to keep up with. But perfect training for it. And so I forgot what the question was.
Sounds like you were laser focused, but was
Yeah, yeah,
before
oh
you
yeah,
really started figuring
so
out
I
how
get to
you
my
would
last
do it?
year, yes. So I get to my last year and I have a teacher, and so junior me sits on his couch in the 70s, listening to albums, got my album covers on my lap going, I want to do that. I want to paint art for album covers. So I'm always in my head going, yeah, I'm going to do album art. And in my third year of school, one of the teachers was a book illustrator, and his work was incredible, sci-fi, fantasy stuff, and I'm going, that's amazing. And he goes, listen, you can do album covers, but they put out a whole lot more books than they put out albums. So do both. And that's where I went, oh, okay, let's do this.
How do you even approach getting into doing album covers? You just like find a band that's willing to let you do theirs, and that's the start?
Well, back then it was kind of the opposite. You got to go to the record company, and the record company would assign artists to bands. They didn't, some would show. I mean, I'm sure.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure the Stones were showing up with their own dude.
Okay.
But if you were nobody, they would, the same way an author doesn't show up to a publisher and say, oh, I want this guy to do my cover. They almost don't have any say in the matter at all. RL didn't pick me.
Really?
Yeah, no. He had nothing to do with that.
I'm kind of shocked by that.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I just assumed the record.
No, you look at it as, and this one makes sense. There's stuff that we did that didn't make any sense, but the publisher I had worked with, and you got to remember, they're vetting me. As I do assignments, if I don't get stuff on time or my work is wildly inconsistent, they know I'm not it's like, fine, okay, we may give you one or two, but you're not the guy we want. So when Goosebumps came along, I had done those things. I was consistent and I was on time, and I proved to be responsible because they knew Goosebumps was going to be one a month, and if things were good, they would keep going.
Deadlines are important.
Yeah, deadlines are. A late piece of artwork is almost valueless.
Right.
Like the production was that tough. So.
Did you get any albums in then? Did you get?
I have. I've done. Not at the beginning. It's funny because there's been a resurgence in vinyl.
Yeah.
I do way more album covers now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. You're still doing it.
Yeah. It happened. It just happened later on. That's
right?
all. Yeah.
Any like bands that you liked? Like you were like, oh, I get to do this band.
I've never done anybody wildly famous.
No, but like, was there anybody that you knew?
Oh
that
yeah,
you liked?
everybody sends you their music, so you can go, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, you get to hear it before.
Yeah,
I guess you want.
now you do.
So do they hear you do they send you the music so you can hear it and be inspired?
Yeah, I always request it. I'm going, look,
yeah.
I got to see what kind of band you are, they all have a written description, and that's fine. But let me hear it, and I'll file it into my own
Right.
classification. And so if you're doing a heavy metal band, you want to make it a little edgier than the guy who's doing acoustics.
Yeah. That's so cool, man. I didn't realize that it was like an assigned thing. I just assumed every band was like, so this is what we want for our album. We gotta get out and do it.
No, so in book business, the publisher picks the illustrator for the author. Then now I get picked, and it's R.L. Stine and I. And
so sorry, before we dive too much into the Goosebumps, so the career from the vinyl albums to the Goosebumps, in between there, are you just doing kind of what work you can get?
Yeah. It's one-offs. You get a book, you go. So my very first book cover was in 1985 for a company called DAW, their science fiction publisher, DAW, Donald A. Walheim. He was an older gentleman who started as an author and then ran his own company. And he was in his 80s, sitting behind the big desk. And if we were making a movie about the intimidating art director, he was cast perfectly for it. So once you get one book cover, that's the toughest thing. Is somebody has to go out on a limb and go, all right, I'm going to give you a shot. And once you have one, then you can go, hey, guy down the street, here it is. I've proven I can get one done. So it was much easier to get other stuff.
So you just kind of slowly
started and you just go to other publishers. A lot of publishers in Manhattan. Like I said, I grew up in New Jersey, so you could drop, again, no social media, no email, no, everything is personal. You know, you got to
Right.
show up with your artwork in a portfolio, drop it off at the door on
Right.
drop-off days. Somebody would review it, and they would give you, you know, a little rejection notice, and
Right.
you take it from there, take it down the street to
Go
the
to the
next
next
guy.
one, just
and
pound
to-
the pavement.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Totally you know, we got to the point where we would get up in the morning, drive to the city, drop the artwork off early, then go home and go to work. This is my ex-wife and myself. We both went to work. Then we get up the next morning, pick it up from the place she dropped it off, take it down the street, drop it off at the next place, get in the car, go home. And you know, it was a grind.
Kids nowadays
Yeah.
just don't know. Like, thankful for your internet, kids.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's so much more to go. Oh, you're on the West Coast? Yeah, here, look at my art. Click. And then they go, oh, I like that. Can you change the background to blue? Yeah, it's on a separate layer. Click, click. So, yes, it was a. But I've talked about this often. Because everything was tangible back then, like you had to go in and show your artwork. The only people who could do what we were doing were the people who had that lived inside that circle. Now, if my dad decided we were living in Pittsburgh, Tim Jacobus doesn't do Goosebumps covers.
Wow.
You know, so
Yeah.
the fact that I lived close enough to make this thing happen and back and forth was, you know, although it sounds like a grind, I was blessed to be inside the line.
Right, right. That's awesome. So you build up the reputation, people know
Yeah.
you're solid, and then you get the call for.
Right, but it wasn't the call. You gotta remember,
Okay.
they thought Goosebumps was a stinker.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell us
the-
about this.
Yeah, so the publisher, that no one had tried doing horror books for the age group 7 to, I think it was 7 to 12 was the official definition.
Yeah, because that's young.
Yeah, right. And
Right.
that RL had been doing Fear Street for the teenagers, and it's fine, but they're just going, you know, what we don't want to do is have a series where the kids are buying them, we're freaking them out, and they're ending up in their parents' bed, and all the parents are now mad at us, and we're getting, you know, mean letters, and they're not buying the books that we already have. So I was approached in this exact manner. And RL tells us a story that's somewhat similar. They came to me and they said, look, we have this new series. We don't think it's going anywhere. So we would like you to paint the first cover, but we don't have a full budget. So we're gonna pay you a couple $100 less than we usually pay you. We promise when this thing fails, we'll put you on something good. So,
You're like, okay.
yeah, my next question was, well, what is this thing? And then when I read the little synopsis about what the story was, I went, oh, this is cool. I was like, yeah, 100%, you know, it's a job, it's here, this is cool, so I'll do it, yeah, I'll do it. So at that point, they weren't sure what they were doing. I had no horror background at that point. I had done some kids stuff, and I had done some what were called Women in Jeopardy stories, which were all the same story except they just changed the location and the lady's name. It was always the soccer mom who stumbles onto something and she sees a murder and now she's going to solve the crimes all by herself. So same story 100 times. And I did covers for those. And when Goosebumps came along, they were like, we like what you're doing, but there's this other more famous horror artist named Jim Thiessen, and we're gonna have him do book number 2. So you do 1, he does 2, we're gonna look at them, and then we'll decide who gets the rest. And at that point, at that time, the rest was only 4 more books.
Right.
Yeah, it was 6, which was good. That's 6
Six
is a
is
lot.
head to head,
I hadn't done 2 in a row, let alone 6 in a row.
Right.
So they did this thing, and when they came back and they looked at them, they said, yeah, you know, we like them both, but Tim's use of color and all those real bright colors makes it less scary. So let's go with Tim, and we'll see how it goes.
Was that intentional on your part?
Well, they told me that you got picked because we dig the colors that you're using. Okay, once you tell me that, I know that's a key element, so
Right.
now I'm gonna lean right into that, and everything that comes after this, you're gonna tell me, hey, yo, you wanna calm down on the color thing? And that never happened, nobody told me to dial it back. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
There wasn't much. I remember because Goosebumps was a little before my time, but I remember being a teenager and all we really had was like the Christopher Pike books.
Yeah.
And that kind of YA stuff. I don't know when I remember. There was Remember Me?
Yeah.
That book.
Yep.
That was. I remember reading that and I was like, it was like a really quality book for like even a teenager though, right? So anyway, sorry, I digress. So you get the gig.
So get the gig, and okay, that's great. So when Goosebumps begins, it doesn't just take off like a rocket. It does okay, and there was some talk around book 6 whether they were going to go any further, because it wasn't doing bad, but it really wasn't doing good.
All the way up to
Yeah.
book 6, it was.
Yeah.
Okay? Wow.
So then, between book 6 and 9, it went from this to that. And everybody has their own theory because there's no documentation on it. But
Yeah, what's yours?
okay, here's my theory. First off, no social media, so the only real push is you guys, as kids, telling one another, this is cool, you should see these, this is cool. And most of you, your first exposure to Goosebumps was in your school library from the Scholastic Book Fair. So we were pumping them right into the schools, and that was your first exposure. So those first books that came out were there, they were in your library. But then you guys started to go, oh, I really dig these, I want my own. And that's when the sales really started to take off, when you said, Mom, I want my new Goosebumps.
Yeah, that
So-
makes perfect sense. Like, what other theories could there kind of be?
Yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
obviously kind of what it had to
But
be.
it took that long for it to get going, and thank goodness they hung on. And then it just, I did a
became
book a
what it
month. Yeah, I did a book a month for the next 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a nice steady gig,
Oh,
right?
So, and when you're doing it, you're going, oh yeah, this is the way things always are. And then when years go by, you go, oh man, this is a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah, that's something you hold on to for sure. So in the manner that you requested the music for the album covers, did you ever read any of the books or just kind of ask for a plot synopsis?
So there wasn't a book to read when I did the cover. So RL was writing the book at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah. So
okay.
he would send me. He famously comes up with the title of the book first, and then he starts from there.
Oh.
So yeah. So I got title, and then I would get a couple of sentences, sometimes a paragraph if I was lucky, and it just gave me some basic background, and I would run with it. Now, you go, oh, well, that's not a lot to work with, but that's actually the best way to work, because if you give me the whole book, I'm going to read the whole book, and then I'm going to get obsessed with details, and it's going to close down the things that I can do, because on page 16 you told me this, and on page 54 you told me this, so I can't, like, the box gets smaller.
Right.
So when it's like, yeah, there's gonna be, this thing called Deep Trouble, and there's a giant hammerhead shark. Have it, go get him.
Yeah.
So I would do 3 sketches for every cover,
Oh.
and then the art director and I would have a discussion, and the editors would get in on it, and they'd go up. Most of the time they would just go, yeah, do number 2, we like that one, that's great. I would take it, and then they'd go, just go ahead and finish, and then I would paint the art. The art was traditional, it was 20 inches by 20 inches, it was acrylic paint, and it was a combination of brush and airbrush. And yeah, so I would then pack it up, cardboard, get it over to Federal Express. My best friends were at Federal Express because they knew what I was doing, and I would be late almost every time, and the door did lock at 8 o'clock. And then they went, what are you doing? And we see you here all the time. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm an illustrator. And they went, all right, listen, if you come to the door and it's locked, drive around back. The garage door is always open. And you could slip it in underneath, and we'll make sure it gets out the door.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
I slipped under the garage door a couple times.
Nice. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the point. So I turned my artwork in. It would get done, and then they would send it to R.L. Stein. That was the first and only time he would see the art, was when it was complete.
Okay.
And at that stage, he was always pretty far along in the production of the story. So the chances that I screwed up were monumental, and it didn't happen very often. And we were, that's one thing that Bob and I have talked about over the years, that it should have gone off the rails a number of times, and there's only been 2 instances, and one, he had to change the book for my art, and one of them I had to change the art because we just had to change the art.
Wow, I'm surprised they were willing to change the book for the art.
So their argument to him was, and it was him calling it out. I'll tell the whole story.
Please do.
So, Say Cheese and Die, everybody's familiar with that company. So it's a family, it's a Polaroid picture of a family of skeletons at a barbecue. And the premise of the story is there's this camera, the kid's fine, and when you get your picture taken with the camera, bad stuff starts to happen. So we send over this final painting, and Arnold looks at it and he's like, yeah, this is awesome. I really like it, he goes, but there's no family of skeletons barbecuing in my story. And they said, well, it's a lot harder for Tim to do a new painting, so figure it out. So in the middle of that story, if you go back, and he's so annoyed by this because he couldn't figure out a cool way to do it, so he wrote a dream sequence into the story, and that's where the family of skeletons gets in. So I didn't know this story until like 4 years ago. So my whole life, I think that this painting is one of the best ones, and we all love it. And I'm sitting there with him, and he starts telling the story. I'm going, oh man, you hate one of my favorite paintings.
Wow, that's cool though that like the art was so importantly on that level. So I'm sure there was a budget.
It's a time
budget
thing. Again, these are traditional pieces. Now, would that happen today? Maybe not, because art is digital, everything's layered.
Right.
I can do way bigger changes with digital art than I could with traditional art. Traditional art was, a lot of time, it was, big sections would have to be redone to make certain changes.
Do you ever do digital art?
Oh yeah, so around 2004, every publisher got together and they gave us all a deadline. They said, in 2 years, if you can't do digital art, you can't play here anymore.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so not fun. I had at that stage been doing my art for over 20 years.
Right.
Had some magic in how I did it and a style. And then they gave me a computer, and in 2004, the computers weren't that great. And they hand me this thing they call a mouse, and it's a rock to me. And they're saying, okay, make nice art with a rock. And it was a tough start.
I'm sure.
Yeah, very frustrating. But then, just like anything else, you start to figure it out, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, this is like, it's like, oh, I used to play guitar. Now I'm learning how to play piano. Oh, I can make different things happen over
Right.
here than I could over here. And now I see the value in both.
Right. Do you appreciate that you were forced to learn it
Yes.
so early
because
in its age? Because now you've got how many years of experience in digital, right? Yeah.
All of life is like that.
Yeah.
There's most of us, if things are going good and everything's fine, you're not going to change what you're doing.
Right.
We are only, the way the humans work is we only change when something bad happens and we're forced to do something different because it takes effort, and we don't want to do that.
Right.
So yes, I was glad I was forced into it early. Yeah, it was frustrating, but so what? It wasn't like I had to go and dig holes. I had to figure out.
Art, yeah. But you're also such a more well-rounded artist because of it.
Yes.
Right?
So now, what I do is everything, even though there's a digital. So if you hire me to do your album, I'm going to do that art digital. if you are hiring me to do a painting for you that you're gonna hang in your living room, I'm gonna do that traditional, just because of the nature of what it's being used for. When I do digital art and when I do traditional art, everything starts outside the computer. You know, I got my pencils, I'm drawing, everything, all my drawings are very tight before I scan them into the computer. And the computer's really only there for color.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
my digital stuff does
Right.
look like my traditional
Which is pretty
stuff.
common these days.
Yes,
A lot of
yeah,
artists
yes,
work
yeah,
with it.
especially anybody who has those drawing skills. Now, there's a lot of younger people who have no drawing skills, they didn't go to art school, and they figured out their own way of making cool looking stuff, and it's all 100% digital.
Right. Touching back to the albums, you mentioned you airbrushed them as well.
Yeah, I started airbrush before, it was just something I picked up because, again, back in the day, painting on vans and motorcycle tanks, that was a good way to make a couple of bucks.
Right.
And I had a friend who ran a body shop, and he would go, hey, I got a guy who can do some art for you. So
Yeah.
that's where I had learned initially to do airbrush. And then once I figured out how to use it, then I went, oh, I can use this in my school projects. And then once I started incorporating there, I went, oh, this is a thing. I can really make this work.
Right. Did you design the logo?
No,
Okay.
no, the story the way I know it is either RL or somebody had an idea and they handed it off to a bunch of logo designers and they kept getting back what they didn't want, and there was somebody who was either an assistant art director or a secretary who said, no, you should do it like this. And she did the rough sketch and they all went, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Right there.
Don't you love how
Yeah,
that stuff
yeah.
works? Super quick, tiny little side story. Matthew Wood is he's the head sound engineer at Lucasfilm. I don't know if you're familiar
Sure.
with him. Yeah. He's also the voice of General Grievous. But what happened was they were like, okay, we want 6 different voices. We want 6 different actors, give you 6 different takes. So he had 5. He found 5 people. It was like late at night one night. He just didn't have a 6. He's like, screw it, I'll do it myself. And he just did like a one-off quick, like just to fill out the 6th. Next day, George Lucas is like, I like this one. Let's have him. And then he was like sitting there like, and George was like, what's the problem? And he's like, that's me. It was kind of a filler. He's like, I like it. You're Grievous.
Isn't that very cool?
Yeah, and now he's a professional
Great.
voice actor too,
Great.
right?
Yeah. That's taking advantage. That's not panicking and going, well, I'll only give him 5. It's like, all right, let me step in here and give it a shot.
Right. So things take off, and you're doing a book a month?
Yeah.
So is he writing a book a month?
Yes, he is.
He's not like pre-writing a bunch like over
no,
time? Wow.
No. He's a machine. The man is in his late 70s, and he is still cranking stuff out like he was a teenager.
Right.
The guy is just so prolific, and and he will, he'll tell you, I'm not, and that, I've written every story. These are all boring. Like he's so
Right.
self-deprecating, but amazing.
That's good to
It's
know.
amazing.
That's nice
But
to
it's
know, yeah.
it's amazing. Like no one's gonna realize until he passes on and they take it and they start putting numbers to it, where everybody's gonna go, that's superhuman.
Right. When we talked last, it was Michigan a bunch of years ago at Astronomicon. I first met you
Yeah,
there,
that's right.
and I believe at the time you weren't working with Goosebumps because there was nothing coming out. But have you started again? Forgive me for not.
No,
being
that's
up on
okay.
Goosebumps.
My reign of terror lasted 12 years, and
Right.
I got a chance to do about 120 covers, which is unheard of.
That's
and
insane.
then what they always do, and it's not that there was an issue with me or anything like that. In the book business, after a certain number of years, we changed the covers and the cover artists. Nancy Drew has been around forever and ever, and
Right.
the artist has changed 100 times. So it's just standard operating procedure to
Right.
keep a fresh look on the books and keep interest. So two things. One, I get a chance to work with RL still once in a while. He does other things. He's been doing some graphic novels, and I've gotten a chance to do a couple covers for recent
Nice.
graphic
So
novels.
sorry, but so now having this career, is he able to choose you? Is he now able to go to his publisher and say,
yes, he is
"Tim's
an advocate for me, and people listen to him.
Okay.
And it's very nice. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
100%. Yes, he definitely puts the thumb on the scale.
Right.
And will get me some
That's
jobs.
awesome.
But
Yeah.
the cooler thing is, I have as much work as I want to do.
Right.
I turn down more than I do.
Oh wow, that's a great position to be in.
Right. And I get to pick and choose what I like. And the thing that's the coolest is, so all you guys that were reading Goosebumps back in the 90s, you're now grown-ups. And some of you are art directors, and some of you are in bands, and some of you are authors, and some of you work at ski companies, and you all write the same email when you reach out to me and you say, hi, I was a Goosebumps fan as a kid, and now I'm this, and I have this project. So my old fans are now my new employers.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's great that it comes around like this. Okay, I'm gonna get, perfect, a question, yes.
Do you think it is easier or more difficult for, especially indies, regardless of musicians, artists, whatever, to become known and get attention in the digital age versus back in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, before we had the social media, the internet? Which do you think was easier or more difficult?
I think, yes. I think it's better now. I think the advent of social media puts a super level field, especially for artists. The commitment, before I go down that rabbit hole, anybody can put their art up on social media, and if you have something that's good, people will push it around, and eyes will get on it, and it will generate its own buzz. I'm not talking it has to have millions of views, but I have pieces that I put up now, and in 15 minutes, more people have seen that than some paintings I did early on. I got paintings, I swear, 23 people have seen. And they're in my attic, and they'll always be in my attic. And so the exposure is there. And if you have something special, it will definitely happen. The tough part is everybody's in the game. You know, the kid over in France, is in the same game that you're in, where I used to say my pool was limited to the circle around Manhattan. Now everybody's in the game. So sometimes you have to be a little more clever in how you present your work to people to get their attention. But it's moving so fast, and technology has changed, and it's really cool. But I think now is the best time to be in the creative field than back in the day.
Right on. What are some of your favorite covers? Anybody? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I like Escape from Berlin, but I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite that you've done out of all of those books?
So I love all the heavy hitters that everybody likes. The Haunted Mask, Night of the Living Dummy, A Day at Horrorland, Say Cheese and Die. Those are the ones that people always say are their favorites. I like the ones that the ones I like are the ones where when I read the description I just went, oh boy, what am I going to do here? The classic is it came from beneath the sink. And that's a story of a killer sponge. Now, there's nothing scary about a killer sponge, and I had to somehow come up with something. I was just like, man, this is killing me. Another one that I like, that the idea was cool, and then my drawing so the blob that ate everyone. And if you don't remember that one, it's this big giant, looks like a human heart coming down the street, and his tongue's out, and he's eating everything in his way. And when I drew it, when it was in pencil, it looked like a big baked potato coming down the street. And I'm going, nah, baked potatoes aren't scary. I hope this comes around soon. But as soon as I got a chance to add some color, it changed up.
How many of the books have you read?
I haven't read hardly any.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I would have to stop what I was doing to go back and read them. I've read a few. I'm actually.
You're also not a child.
No, but I went back recently and read one and was very impressed. You know, I don't want to go too over the top. So when I was doing more books than I am now, they came from publishers. So the whole vetting process had been done already. Nobody's getting a book printed at a notable publisher that doesn't have real skill. Now everybody can self-publish. So that whole layer has gone away, and people are going, will you do my book cover? And then they send me their book, and some of them aren't great.
Right.
And then I go, am I just becoming an old man? You're just going, y'all don't know what you're doing, kids, you don't know what you're doing, get off my lawn. And I went back and read Goosebumps, going, all right, is it me? And then when I read it, I went, of course this isn't for me, but the structure, the setup, end of the chapter, there's a hook, makes you want to read the next chapter. Then at the end, there was always a twist.
Right.
And I just went, yeah, this is brilliant. So I'm a big fan of Stay Out of the Basement, even though I didn't do the initial cover. They did, what was nice about the people at Scholastic, so we get done with the classic series. There's 62 books in the classic series. And they say, hey, this is 2005. They go, hey, you did them all except for Stay Out of the Basement and Be Careful What You Wish For. And I was like, yeah, and what's the story? And I said, well, Jim Thiessen did the first one. And I said, be careful what you wish for. I went on vacation. And sorry. I took one day off in 15 years.
Right.
And they went, oh, well, let's go back and do those. So so there is when I tell you I did them all, I really did them all. I just it took me a couple of extra years to get those last two.
Do you feel at all, was there any kind of like not wanting to step on that other artist because they got a shot to do one kind of thing? Or?
Well, I did. They had their this is now 2005. They had this was 92 when we started.
Yeah.
They had a lot of years to bask in their
Okay, yeah.
So no, I was going, I'd love to.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was like that later on.
So it was nice to get those pieces and be able to say that I did the full original classic Goosebumps.
That's so awesome. It's so cool. We have a few minutes left. In the back there with the mask. Yeah. That's it.
If you could draw a cover for any book, album, or movie that's already come out, what would your absolute dream job be? So,
I've already had the dream career, and I hate to say that and make it, I'm not avoiding your question. I've got a chance to do tons of what I wanted to do. People know my work. It's again, it floors me that anybody is here in this room bothering to listen to me, that you guys all still remember this stuff. That was a long time ago. That was forever ago, yet you guys still have a place. Sorry, it's stuck in your brain, and it occupies some real estate that you can't shake. And no, I really, it's not lost on me, and that's the coolest thing there could be. Now, having said that, I don't know if I would like to do, some, Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger or, any of the classic horror stuff, but I know I wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be, I don't know if I would do it justice. I would just be doing it. So, it's nothing that I'm calling people about. Here's the story. Here's the story. No. Here's a good story. So, when I was in art school, again, this was 78, 79, 80, and that was when Stephen King was just so hot. And when we were in art school, the only thing that you told everybody, to each other, someday I'm going to do a Stephen King cover. Someday I'm doing a Stephen King cover. No doubt, 100%. We were just punks, and no business even remotely saying that. So many years after I get out of school, I get a call and they say, hey, we're repackaging 3 Stephen King books into one hardback. The Shining, Pet Sematary, and I always forget the third one. Doesn't matter. Salem's Lot. Look at you. Look at you. And, but we're going to concentrate on The Shining, which, you know, the book, the movie, you know, this had a huge impact on me as a young guy. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get a chance to do a Stephen King cover. So I concoct this drawing, and it's a picture of the main character. He's outside the house. It's snowing. He's got his hands stretched out, and they're bloody red, and they're dripping in the snow. So it's, you know, basically an all-white scene. And when I turned in my artwork, you couldn't tell that that's what I was painting, was blood on the hands. So I took the pencil sketch and I painted the hands red and said, you know, just so they understood that's what I meant. And when I sent it over, they're like, oh, this is great. And okay, let's go to the final, this is perfect. And I was like, all right, so do you want me to do the typical, you know, the Goosebumps, bright colors and all that? And they're like, no. We like what you did on the sketch. We want you to do a black and white painting and just put the blood on the hands, and that's gonna be the only color in the piece. I was like, oh, that's cool, I like that. So, also when you've seen my work in the past, anytime there's a human figure in my paintings, I always take a photograph, because you know, you just need those little extra details as reference to make something look realistic. And I use, you know, there's family members on Goosebumps covers, and you know, my dad was on a couple of mysteries, and so, but in this one, since it was Stephen King and I was only going to get one opportunity to do a Stephen King cover, not only was I going to paint that cover, I was going to be on that cover. So I took a picture of me in my overcoat, and so that's me on the cover, and so I did a Stephen King cover, and I got on a Stephen King cover. So.
Amazing. That is the perfect way to end this conversation. But kids, Tim has a table upstairs in Artist Alley. If you want to say hello and chat with him, I'm sure he's happy to do so up there. Check out the art. Tim, thank you,
yes, you
so much for taking the time to hang out with us. Tim Jacobus, everybody.
Woo! Yeah!
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.